Be honest with me before you judge. If your husband could spend all day being gentle with other people's children but had nothing left for you, would you stay quiet forever? I was not trying to destroy his career. I was trying to make him look at me. Of course, he made it sound like I was some monster for opening one door during one lesson. He sat there tapping the corner of his laptop twice, calm like the teacher always was when he wanted to avoid a real conversation. By the end of that month, I was going to make everyone see whose home he had really abandoned. My name is Delaney Brooks. I am 25, and I work as a junior marketing coordinator for a home lifestyle brand. So yes, I know how things look from the outside. I know how a woman sounds when she says she only wanted help with dishes, and I know how a man sounds when he calls that an interruption. I was not trying to destroy the teacher. I was trying to reach my husband. Of course, Evan sat there tapping the corner of his laptop twice, calm like he always was when he wanted to turn a real marriage into another scheduled meeting. By the end of that month, I was going to make everyone see whose home he had really abandoned. Before all of this, before the basement door and the students and the little message that everyone now acts like was some kind of holy warning, Evan and I were not miserable. That is the part people skip, because it makes the story easier if I sound cruel from the first line. We had small things that belonged only to us. Every Friday, before the world turned into video calls and disinfectant wipes, we bought cheap tacos from the place beside the gas station and ate them on the couch with the paper bag between us. He taught math, so he always had stories about students who made strange mistakes with full confidence. I liked those stories. I liked his tired teacher face when he came home and still had a laugh left for me. Be honest, that is not nothing. A marriage does not break because one person wakes up bored one morning. It breaks because a room gets colder by 1 degree every day and everyone keeps saying it is fine. When remote teaching started, Evan brought the school into our house and then acted like I was the guest. He took the small spare room near the hallway, pushed my storage boxes into the closet, and set up a desk with his laptop, a ring light, a whiteboard, and those plastic file folders he loved because he said colour helped him separate classes. Blue for algebra, green for geometry, yellow for parent notes. He even taped a schedule on the fridge. Algebra from 8:30 to 9:15. Planning period, geometry, office hours, department call, grading. The teacher had turned our kitchen into a staff lounge and our hallway into a quiet zone. Of course, he said it was temporary. Men always say temporary when they mean get used to it. I tried at first. I really did. I made coffee lower in the morning so the machine would not hiss during his first class. I closed cabinets softly. I answered my work calls from the bedroom with my laptop balanced on a pillow because his students needed the good internet more than I did. Then one morning a delivery came, 2 heavy boxes stacked by the front door, and I called for him because the driver had left them halfway across the step. Evan was standing in the spare room doorway, adjusting the angle of his screen. He tapped the corner of his laptop twice, glanced at the little camera light, and asked if it could wait 20 minutes. Soft voice. Teacher voice. The kind he used when a student had the wrong answer but he did not want to embarrass them. I heard the words, but what I heard under them was "wait your turn." I asked if his wife needed an appointment now. He said he was about to start class. I said the boxes were not about to grow legs. He smiled a little, not happy, just tired, and asked what had changed with me lately. That was his soft curiosity, the kind that should have opened a door. Instead, it closed one. What had changed was that he was home all day, 10 feet away, and somehow farther from me than when he used to leave before sunrise. What had changed was that he had patience for confused teenagers and bullet points for me. I dragged one box inside myself, scraping the cardboard across the floor loud enough that he shut his door. I stood there with my hands on the tape, breathing through my nose, and I told myself not to be dramatic. Then Kendra called. Kendra is my older cousin, the kind of woman who always sounds like she has already survived the thing you are only starting to understand. She asked why I sounded strange, and I told her Evan had asked me to wait because he was teaching. She said men love turning work into a locked room. Tara, a woman from my home life balance group, said almost the same thing later, only sharper. She called it emotional outsourcing. I liked that phrase. It made the ache in my chest sound intelligent instead of needy. The first time I opened his door during class, I did not plan it like some attack. I was standing in the kitchen looking at the sink, at 2 plates and a pan he had promised to wash after dinner. His voice floated out of the spare room, warm and steady, telling someone that mistakes were part of learning. Mistakes, part of learning. I picked up a dish towel and walked down the hall before I could talk myself out of it. When I opened the door, Evan was on camera. Little squares of student faces filled the screen. He turned toward me fast. I asked if he planned to wash the dishes before they became part of the lesson too. A few students laughed. Not loud, just enough. Evan tapped the corner of the laptop twice and asked very carefully if we could talk after class. I asked if that meant yes or no. He said yes later. Later. Always later. I closed the door, and for the first time in weeks, I felt like he had been forced to remember I existed while someone else could see him doing it. After class, he did not yell. That almost annoyed me more. He came into the kitchen and said 36 students had heard me. Specific. Calm. Like he was grading the damage. I told him he was being dramatic. I said they were kids and kids hear worse online every day. He said this was his classroom. I said it was our house first. He looked at me for a long second, then at the fridge calendar with all those neat little blocks, and he tapped 2 fingers against the counter, the same rhythm as the laptop. I thought it meant he had nothing left to say. I thought that silence was mine to fill. So I did. The dishes should have been the end of it, be honest. One small moment. One wife asking one husband to remember that the house did not stop being real because a laptop was open. But Evan treated it like I had walked into a courtroom with a hammer. For 2 days, he moved around me carefully. He washed plates before I could mention them. He closed his teaching room door with 2 fingers instead of letting it click. He lowered his voice when I passed the hallway, as if my footsteps were a storm warning. Of course, that made the house feel even less like mine. I was not a person anymore. I was a possible interruption. The next time happened because of his pants. They were on the bedroom floor, folded over themselves like he had stepped out of them and forgotten the rest of the world existed. I stood over them while his voice came through the wall. The teacher was explaining slope to some student who sounded close to crying. Evan told them there was no shame in needing the problem explained again. No shame. I laughed once, not because it was funny. He could hand patients out through a screen like candy, but if I asked him to carry a box or hear me for 10 minutes, his whole body became a locked cabinet. I picked up the pants and walked to the spare room. His class was still going. I opened the door and held them up, not high, just enough for him to see. He turned so fast his chair rolled back. Little faces moved on the screen. I told him he needed to stop leaving clothes around like I was his maid. He tapped the corner of his laptop twice, muted himself, and turned the camera off. That bothered me more than if he had shouted. It made me look like something shameful he had to hide from the children. He asked me in that careful voice to leave the room until class ended. I told him responsibility did not pause for math. He said he was teaching. I said he was also married. The gap between those 2 sentences filled the room, and neither one of us stepped over it. After class, he came into the bedroom with the pants still in his hand. He did not throw them in the hamper. He folded them once badly, like a man proving he could perform a basic task while missing the whole point. He said the dishes had embarrassed him, but the pants made students laugh at him. He said one boy had repeated my maid comment in the chat before Evan could clear it. Specific. Factual. Almost cold. I told him he was using children as witnesses against me. He asked if I understood that his classroom had to feel safe for them. Safe again. That word made my jaw tighten. I told him I was his wife, not a threat. He said he knew that, but he did not know what would happen when the door opened anymore. Be honest, what was I supposed to do with that? apologize because he had made me sound dangerous. I gave him moral language back because that was the only language men like Evan respected. I told him a good husband did not make his wife compete with ninth graders for kindness. He did not answer quickly. That was his flaw. Evan could explain equations all day, but when a feeling stood in front of him without numbers, he looked for a clean place to put it and found none. 2 days later, he moved his setup to the basement. He said it would give me the upstairs back. I heard punishment dressed as compromise. The basement was unfinished, with old paint cans by the wall and a narrow window that made the room look underwater. He carried down his laptop, his ring light, his whiteboard, and those plastic file folders. Blue, green, yellow. The teacher building another little kingdom under my feet. Kendra told me in a voice note that men always ran to caves when they were losing control. Tara said the move proved he knew I was right, because innocent people did not hide. I liked hearing that. It made my anger feel organized. From upstairs, I could hear him teaching through the vent. His voice came up softer than before, but still warm. Sometimes he laughed with them. Sometimes he told a student to take their time. Sometimes he used the same patient pause he used to use with me, back when Friday tacos still felt like a real marriage, and not a memory I was dragging behind me. One afternoon, a notification flashed on his tablet while I was wiping the counter. It was from someone named Mason Reed, listed as parent liaison. The preview mentioned online classroom stability and student comfort. I stared at it for a second, then rolled my eyes. Of course the school had people for that, a whole system to protect his peace, while I had to beg for 5 minutes of attention in my own home. When he came upstairs, I asked why parents were emailing him like he was running a hospital. He said remote school made everything visible now. I said maybe that was good. Maybe people should see more. He looked at me then, really looked, and tapped 2 fingers on the side of his tablet. I thought it was nerves. I thought it meant the teacher finally understood that the house could not be managed like one of his lesson plans. That night, I told Kendra about the parent email, but I left out the part where the student had repeated the made comment. I told Tara the basement made him colder, but I left out how I had waited until I heard his kindest voice before opening the door. Small omissions, nothing serious. A woman is allowed to tell the version that explains the pain. By the end of that week, I had started standing at the top of the basement stairs during his lessons, listening to the warmth he kept sending upward to everyone but me. If he wanted the basement to be a classroom, I was going to remind him whose floor was over his head. The basement should have solved it for him. That was what Evan wanted me to believe. He had his little desk under the stairs, his ring light balanced on a box, his whiteboard pushed against the wall where the paint peeled near the floor. He had the laptop, the headphones, the colour folders, the whole teacher world rebuilt in the ugliest room of our house. He said the move gave me space upstairs. Be honest, that was not space. That was exile with better wording. He went down every morning with his coffee and closed the door like he was entering a different life. I stayed above him, hearing pieces of that life through vents and floorboards. Warm voice, gentle laugh, patient pause. The teacher was alive under my feet, and my husband came back up only when he needed food or clean socks. At first, I tested the door the way anyone would test a locked thing. I turned the handle during one of his classes. It did not open. The sound was small, just metal catching metal, but his voice paused below me. Then it continued, smooth, controlled, like I had not touched anything. So I knocked. Not hard, not angry, just enough to remind him that the basement was not a school building. He kept teaching. That pause before he continued gave me a strange kind of relief because it proved he heard me. He could ignore me, but he could not erase me. Later, he came upstairs and asked why I had rattled the door during class. Quiet debrief. No raised voice. No heat. He asked it like a man checking damage after a storm. I told him I was looking for laundry baskets. He said there were no laundry baskets in the basement. I said maybe there would be if he stopped treating me like a stranger in my own home. He tapped 2 fingers against his laptop, which he had carried upstairs to grade at the table, and said the students had heard the knocking. I told him students were not made of glass. He said neither was I, but I was acting like every closed door was an insult. That one landed too close, so I stepped around it. I told him a husband who closes doors all day should not complain when someone finally knocks. After that, I became more deliberate, though I would not have used that word then. I timed things, not because I was cruel, because timing was the only language he respected. If I asked for attention after class, he was tired. If I asked at dinner, he had grading. If I asked before bed, he was half asleep. So yes, I chose moments when I knew he had to stay polite. Maybe that sounds bad. Maybe it was fair. The day with the plastic folders started with his voice. That is the part I keep coming back to. I was folding laundry upstairs, matching socks he had not thanked me for washing, and I heard him through the vent, telling a student to breathe and try again. He said the answer was not the point, the process was. Soft, careful, almost loving. I looked at the stack of old plastic file folders on the side table. Blue, green, yellow. He had left them upstairs after sorting materials the night before. I picked them up and stood there for a few seconds with my thumb pressed into the bent corner of the green one. Of course, even his folders had a system. Of course, every student got a colour and every lesson got a place. I carried them downstairs. The basement smelled like dust and warm electronics. Light showed under the door in one thin line. He was in the middle of geometry talking about angles. I knelt down and slid the first folder under the gap. It moved across the floor into his camera frame. I heard a student laugh. I slid the second one, then the third. The laughter changed. It got bigger for a second, then uncertain, like the room did not know whether this was a joke anymore. Evan stopped mid-sentence. I imagined his face, that controlled teacher face cracking in front of all those little squares. I said through the door that if he could organize other people's children, he could organize his own files. The words came out bright, clever, clean. For 1 second I was proud of them. Inside I heard the small tap. Twice. Then silence. He had muted himself. The camera clicked off. A chair moved. When he opened the door, the folders were scattered behind him on the concrete floor, too colourful for that ugly room. His face was not angry. That annoyed me first. Then it confused me. He looked sad in a plain way, like something simple had been broken. He asked why I wanted them to see this. I told him maybe they should know their favourite teacher was not perfect. He said it was not about perfect. He said it was about safe. Safe. Again. I almost laughed because the word felt stolen from people with real danger, not a man whose wife had slid folders under a door. I told him he was making himself a victim because I wanted basic respect. He looked past me toward the stairs and said nothing for a moment. Then he went back in and finished class with his camera off. Upstairs, I sent Kendra a voice note. I made it funny. I said the teacher had survived the folder attack. Kendra replied with a laughing emoji first, then a shorter message saying, maybe I should be careful with students watching. That was new. Kendra never softened the edge. Tara did the opposite. She sent fire emojis and said invisible wives had to get loud because polite women got buried. I liked Tara's version better. By dinner, Evan barely ate. He kept his phone face down beside his plate and tapped the table twice with 2 fingers. I thought he was running out of ways to hide. Then a notification lit up his screen from a student named Maya Chen. The preview said she wanted to know if everything was okay. I read it, smiled, and pushed his phone back toward him. A 9th grader had decided to play counselor. Of course she had. If everyone wanted a performance, I was ready to give them a better one. After the folder thing, I changed tactics because I am not stupid. Be honest. If one way of being heard makes people act like you are the problem, then you try another way. I became softer around Evan, not soft in the way he wanted, where I would disappear during school hours and return only when the teacher closed his laptop. Softer in a way that made sense. I made dinner before he asked. I put his clean shirts on the back of the chair outside the basement instead of opening the door. I even stopped knocking for 2 full days, which he treated like peace instead of effort. That was Evan's flaw in one neat little picture. If there was no noise, he thought the problem was solved. If no one cried, he thought no one was hurt. On the third evening, I told him we needed a family check-in. He looked up from his laptop at the kitchen table and tapped the corner twice, even though class was over. That little habit followed him everywhere now. I told myself it was nervous energy. He asked why his work problem needed an audience. I told him because he kept pretending it was only work. He said I kept bringing work into places where it did not belong. Clean answer. Teacher answer. The kind of sentence that sounds reasonable because it has no blood in it. I told him his mother should hear what was happening, and Kendra too, because marriage did not happen inside one man's private calendar. He asked if I wanted repair or witnesses. I said maybe witnesses were the only way to get repair from a man who kept hiding behind lesson plans. He did not answer that. Of course he did not. The next day, Diane came by with soup and printer paper. Evan had mentioned once that the school copier was useless, and his mother acted like that was a national crisis. She stood in our hallway holding the bag, looking toward the basement like it was a hospital room. I tried to keep it light. I told her basement dad would be grateful for supplies from Central Command. Usually Diane smiled at my jokes even when she did not like them. This time she only asked whether Evan had a quiet place to teach. Quiet. That word sounded polite, but it had teeth. I told her the house was quiet unless Evan was being sensitive. She set the printer paper on the hall table and smoothed the top sheet with her hand. Then she said he had always needed quiet to do hard things. Not defense, not attack. Just that. It bothered me more than if she had blamed me. Women like Diane could make silence feel like a locked church door. After she left, Evan asked what I had said to his mother. I told him nothing that was not true. He asked if I had turned his classroom into a family topic now. I told him he had turned our marriage into a school policy first. Again, that gap opened between us. He wanted specific incidents. I wanted him to admit the pattern. He named the dishes, the pants, the door, the folders. I named the loneliness, the cold dinners, the way his voice changed when he talked to children and changed back when he talked to me. For a second, he looked tired enough to be honest. He said he did not know how to be fully present for 30 students and then come upstairs ready to be examined. That was almost something real. Almost. Then he ruined it by saying boundaries were not rejection. Be honest, men love that sentence. It makes any locked door sound mature. The near-clear moment came that night. I was walking past the basement stairs with a laundry basket when I saw Evan at his desk, watching a recording of one of his classes. The door was half open. His face was lit blue by the screen. On the recording, I heard my own voice through the basement door. Not the words first, the tone, sharp, flat, smaller than I remembered. I saw Evan on screen, one hand near the laptop trying to keep his face still while coloured folders lay behind his chair. A few student squares were frozen open. One girl had her hand over her mouth. For one breath, I saw what they might have seen. Not a wife asking for help. A classroom being invaded from the other side of a door. My fingers tightened around the laundry basket handle until the plastic pressed into my palm. Then I moved. I told myself recordings always make women sound worse. Microphones hate women's voices. Men cut clips because they do not want to discuss the full story. That thought settled me. I carried the basket upstairs and did not mention what I had seen. Later, Evan told me a student named Maya had sent him another message. He said she asked if he had someone to talk to at home. He said it without anger, almost with shame. I said maybe he should be embarrassed that a child cared more about his feelings than he cared about mine. His mouth tightened. He tapped the laptop twice and closed it. That was when I saw another name on his inbox before the screen went dark. Principal Renee Adler. The subject line mentioned online classroom environment and documentation. I laughed under my breath. Of course, the school had discovered another form, another process, another adult who would protect the teacher from a wife asking to exist. Kendra's replies slowed after that. One voice note became a text. One text became a heart reaction. Tara, though, kept pushing. She told me to name the pattern before Evan named it for me. So I opened a document and wrote the heading at the top. He is present for everyone but me. If he wanted everyone to think I was the disruption, then my next move was simple. I would gather the people who knew us, speak first, and make the room hear the wife before they heard the teacher. The family check-in was my idea, which matters because people like to pretend I was dragged into some scene I did not understand. I chose the time. I chose the link. I chose who came. Be honest, if a marriage keeps turning into one person's private version of events, then witnesses are not drama. Witnesses are balance. I sent the Zoom invite to Diane, to my mother, to Kendra, and to Tara, because Tara had been the one person willing to say the ugly part out loud. Evan asked if this was really necessary, and I told him the teacher had built an audience for every part of his day, except the part where his wife was hurting. He tapped the corner of his laptop twice, then asked if he could invite someone neutral. I said yes because I thought neutral would help me. He added Mr. Wallace, an older teacher from his department, a quiet man with silver hair and the kind of tired face that made him look harmless. Of course Evan chose another teacher. Men like him always feel safer beside someone who speaks in policies. I spent the hour before the call getting ready like it was a work presentation. I fixed the lamp near my side of the table. I brushed my hair. I opened the document I had started, the one titled, He is present for everyone but me. And I read it twice. Kendra sent one message saying I should stay calm. That was all. A month earlier, she would have sent 3 voice notes and a joke about men hiding in caves. This time, one sentence. I told myself she was busy. Tara sent me a flame emoji and wrote that women had to name the pattern before men renamed it as instability. That sounded like strength, so I kept it near me. When the boxes appeared on the screen, I felt the room settle around my version. My mother was there with her reading glasses on her head. Diane sat stiffly in her living room. Kendra had her camera on, but she looked down more than she looked at me. Tara joined from her phone, walking somewhere outside, smiling like she had entered a story she already understood. Evan sat beside me but not close. His laptop was angled between us. The teacher looked calm. I looked ready. I opened gently. I said I wanted accountability, not blame. I said remote teaching had changed our house into a place where my needs had to be scheduled around other people's children. I said Evan could spend 40 minutes helping a 9th grader feel safe with fractions, but when I asked him to hear me, he acted like I was breaking into a classroom. That was true. Even he could not deny it. He looked at the screen, then at me, and did not argue. For a second, that silence felt clean. I pressed harder because silence from Evan always meant there was more space to fill. I described the dishes, but I made it sound simple. I described the pants, but I called it a joke. I described the plastic folders as me trying to get his attention after he locked himself underground. I said the basement door had become a symbol of the whole marriage. Tara nodded. My mother frowned in the way she did when she was preparing to agree with me. Diane kept her hands folded. Mr. Wallace did not move at all. Evan tapped the corner of his laptop twice. There it was again. His little ritual. His little way of leaving while still sitting in the room. Then he spoke, still calm, and asked if I wanted repair or victory. I hated that question because it made me sound like the cruel one. I told him this was exactly what he did. He took a wife's pain and turned it into a debate question. He said he was making one real offer. We could stop the call, set clear work hours, start counselling, and tell the full truth about what had happened during classes. Full truth. I almost smiled. Be honest, men only love full truth when they think they can arrange the pieces. I told him counselling would just be another room where he played patient teacher, and I got cast as the loud wife. His face changed then, Not much, just enough. He looked tired, and for a second, the old Friday taco version of him was there, the man who used to come home with stories and let me lean against him while he graded papers. Then he closed that face and said he would handle things properly. Not loudly, not with threat. Properly. The word sounded so dry that I dismissed it. I had the room. He had a word. So I crossed the line. I shared my screen. The document filled everyone's view. He is present for everyone but me. Under it, my draft post was open for Tara's home life balance group. I had not published it yet, but I had written enough. Math teacher. Basement door. Wife treated like a disruption. Students laughing while a husband hid behind professionalism. I read parts aloud, steady and clear, because I wanted them to hear what I sounded like when I was not being muffled through a door. Evan got quieter. I got stronger. I said the teacher could make a whole classroom feel seen while making his wife feel like background noise. Diane lowered her eyes. My mother said nothing. Tara nodded less. I reached for Kendra in the private chat and asked if I sounded too harsh. The message sat there, no dots. No reply. Minutes later, she sent only a thumbs up. Small. Almost lazy. I told myself she trusted me to finish. Evan did not interrupt once. That was the part that made me feel safest. He let me speak. He let the document sit on the screen. He let everyone read the title. When the call ended, I closed my laptop and looked at him like I had finally made him understand the cost of ignoring me. He only tapped the corner of his laptop twice and carried it downstairs. His silence followed him, but I did not chase it. I had said enough. In the morning, I planned to publish the post. The school district meeting was supposed to be simple. Evan said it was about home learning boundaries, and spouses were allowed to listen. Be honest, I heard that, and thought he was finally giving me the room I deserved. If teachers and parents were there, then maybe they would understand that a wife was not background noise just because a lesson was open. I sat beside him with my hair brushed and my document minimized, ready if I needed it. Principal Adler appeared first, then Mason Reed, then Mr. Wallace. 2 parents joined. Diane joined from her living room. My mother joined late. Kendra was not there. Tara came in with her camera off. Of course, I told myself everyone was busy. I spoke first because silence always lets men arrange the frame. I said families were under pressure. I said remote work had made wives invisible. I said asking about dishes or laundry did not make a woman dangerous. My voice was calm. Work voice. Reasonable voice. Then Evan tapped the corner of his laptop twice. Same little habit. Same escape. Only this time he smiled. Not wide. Not cruel. Just enough to make the room go still. Principal Adler said the school was not meeting to judge chores. She said they were meeting because several classroom disruptions had been documented across weeks. I set my glass down, but my hand stayed around it. Mason Reed said students had reported concern, parents had reported concern, and staff had reviewed the pattern. Pattern. That was my word. They had taken it from me and turned it around. The calendar on the fridge clicked into place. The parent liaison email. The class recordings. Evan watching himself teach while my voice came through the door. Maya Chen's message. The principal's subject line about documentation. None of it had been paperwork floating around his life. It had been his life becoming visible to people who mattered. I said recordings could be cut. Mason said the full class recordings were available. He listed the dishes, the pants, the locked door, the knocking, the folders sliding behind Evan's chair, and Evan muting himself before returning to class. No one raised their voice. That made it worse. Then Principal Adler said the concern became serious when a student asked whether her teacher was safe at home. I looked at Evan. He did not look proud. He looked tired. He said I had been right that he gave his students a softer version of himself than he gave me. He said that was his failure. Then he said his failure did not give me the right to turn his classroom into a stage. Tara left the meeting before anyone asked her anything, and later her comments under my draft post were gone. The next week, Evan's attorney filed a separation petition, and the district kept a formal workplace statement on record. Housing. Evan moved into a small apartment near the school, with one desk and no locked basement door. Finances. My access to the shared emergency account ended under temporary orders. Social circle. Kendra stopped sending voice notes and answered only practical questions. Conflict partner. Tara posted that she had not known the full context and blocked me by lunch. Public reality. My lifestyle brand removed me from client-facing remote work campaigns before the next Monday meeting. I still think a wife should not have to beg to be seen. I still think Evan knew how to be gentle and chose when to spend it. But I wanted witnesses so badly that I forgot witnesses can look both ways. On the kitchen table, one green plastic folder stayed bent at the corner. I thought I was sliding my pain under his door, but all I pushed through was the last proof he needed.